O lugar mais feliz do mundo. É assim que é conhecido os parques da Disney. Mas eles não são felizes por acaso. Tem muito processo e estratégia por trás. Hoje eu tenho o prazer de conversar com uma lenda. Uma pessoa que durante 26 anos liderou o processo de crescimento e criação de cultura da Disney. Dan Cockerell, aqui no Brasil, no SuperCast hoje, compartilhando como é que você pode se tornar um líder que permite que a grandeza floresça no seu negócio, em vez de limitar o seu crescimento. Hoje, no SuperCast, escuta só. Qualidade não é diferencial, é obrigação. Se você não tem qualidade, você nem deveria estar no mercado. Eu iria em transformar a marca de vocês num objeto de desejo. Dan Cockerell, I'm so excited about having you here. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Well, I'm excited to be here, and I really appreciate you doing this in English. I would love to do this in Portuguese. Maybe someday I'll be here.
Down the road a little bit, yeah.
That's right.
How do you introduce yourself usually to people that don't know you?
Well, I tell them that I grew up at Disney. My dad was in the hospitality industry, so I grew up in the industry of helping people and serving people. Started in college at Disney. I blinked and 26 years had gone by. 2 years ago, my wife and I started talking about maybe making a change. And she kind of said, either you can retire at Disney or we can take this opportunity to start a whole new life and have a second career. And we love traveling. We've traveled a lot, but we decided if we're going to be able to do that and meet more people, it was time to leave Disney. It was time to go and try something else. It was very scary to take the leap. But she had a lot of confidence in me.
I heard this motto once, happy wife, happy life.
That is a very good motto. I think it's on the top 5 of a happy marriage.
Yeah, there you go, yeah. You're saying you were at Disney for 26 years?
Yes.
And how did you get started?
When I was growing up, my father was with Marriott Hotels, and we moved every couple of years. And my parents took me traveling. They took me to Asia, we went to Europe. So I was exposed from an early age and really learned to be comfortable in other cultures, learning to be comfortable when I didn't understand the language. My dad joined Disney when I was in college. He was hired for the Euro Disney project, and I went to Paris to visit my parents for Christmas. And they said, well, what are you going to do when you graduate from college? And I said, I have no idea, but it's a long way away. And they said, well, it's in 4 months, and you're not moving in with us. So you better come up with a plan. And my dad said, he always gives me great advice. And he said, well, look, why don't you go to casting? That's what we call the employment center at Disney. Why don't you go and talk to them and see if you can get a job at Euro Disney? And I said, doing what? And he said, you know what? It doesn't matter, because you're going to get to go work in France, and you're going to get to learn the language, and you're going to get to learn about the business. And I'd already worked for Disney in college before that, so I was familiar with the company. I really enjoyed it. Someone asked me the other day what I enjoyed most about it. And I said, first of all, if you like serving people, if you enjoy hospitality and serving people, Disney's a great place to work, because that's what you do with the guests. You're there to serve them. And secondly, it's a very structured environment. Everything is very consistent. There's a lot of rules about how you get work done. And I've always enjoyed a lot of structure. And so that's why being an entrepreneur has been so much of a learning, because it's very unstructured, and you have to create your own structure for that. So I left Boston University, and I came down to Florida. They said, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. What do you have? And they said, well, we're going to put you in the parking lot to park cars. And I said, that's great. I was hoping you'd say parking, because that's what I want to do. And so for 6 months...
As a greeter?
Yeah, I was in the parking lot telling cars which space they had to go into.
Oh my God.
And that was my first job. And a lot of executives at Disney, that was their first job. You start on the front line doing a frontline role to learn what the product is all about and learn about the experience. And I think it's really shaped me. I've never forgotten what it was like to be a frontline employee, frontline cast member at Disney. And it's always reminded me to respect the job our frontline cast do, because they're the ones that create the magic for people. They're the ones that interact with our guests. They're the reason people come back to Walt Disney World again. So I did that for 6 months, and then I moved over to France in January of 1992. That was about 3 months before the park opened. I went over there and I spoke about 5 words of French. I'd been studying it a little bit, but not much. And I remember being on the plane flying over there, and I said, okay, you don't speak the language, you've never lived in another country extensively, so how are you going to handle this? And there's 2 ways to handle these situations, I think. One is you can close yourself, you can become quiet, you can become reserved, and you can become scared and sort of shut everything out. Or you can open up and just say, this is going to be an adventure. I'm going to have ridiculous situations I'm going to be in, but I'm just going to go have fun. And I'm going to try to speak. And every day I'm just going to try to speak whatever word I know in French, and I'm just going to keep practicing. And I think you've probably gone through that process living in another country and learning English. Once you're immersed in it, you have to practice every single day. And as adults, we don't like to do that because as an adult, you're not supposed to make mistakes. And that's why we don't learn. That's why children learn so fast. They're not worried about making mistakes. They make a mistake, they learn from it, they get up and they just keep going. So it's almost like when I learned the new language, I had to think like a little kid and just say, I'm just going to say whatever comes to my mind and we'll practice this. And so I got there, and that was, we opened the park 3 months later in April of 1992. And it was hard. Every day was hard. The phone rang and I would just get stressed because you're trying to understand what people are saying. And my wife, having lived in the United States, we both agree when you go to another culture, we've decided it's not better and it's not worse, it's just different. And you can't judge it. And we all naturally like to judge things. We like to see things and say that's good or bad. That's not how they do it in my country. I found out after a few months in France, the country was not going to change just because I disagreed with how things were done all the time. So you start adapting, and you start adapting to the culture, you start adapting to people, you start changing yourself. And I just worked the rest of my career at Disney. So I had 19 different jobs at Walt Disney World. 19. You learn, you are challenged. When you go get new experiences and you go into new environments, you're always a novice. You don't quite know what's happening. It's like me visiting Brazil. You have to be comfortable with just kind of not quite knowing what's going on, but you can feel the energy. You know that it's a place to be. And like I said, we've become very comfortable with traveling. We've traveled to North Africa, we've been to Japan, traveled extensively in Europe and South America. And I think just the world is such an incredible, interesting place. I got to meet lots of people from all around the world at Walt Disney World, but there's always a time to make that change. So I call this my 20th job. Wow. 19 with Disney, and my 20th is my own company now. My wife had worked for Disney for about 10 or 12 years and left, and then she taught at the Disney Institute as a leadership trainer, and she taught leadership and customer service. So it's very much a tradition in our family that are in the hospitality business. All of us have worked at Disney. My daughter worked there selling ice cream. My son has worked there waiting tables. My wife has worked there. My father's worked there. I've worked there. And we find at Disney, people who recommend friends or family to work there are usually pretty successful because they have the personality and they have the extroverted personality. They enjoy service, and it's the right environment to be in and to thrive in. You work with world-class people there, and you learn a lot. And I grew up playing sports, and I always discovered that when I played on teams with people who were better than me, I always played better. And I think that's a big thing great environments do for people. They make you step up and stretch yourself. Peer pressure is very powerful, and it could be a very good thing. And you don't want to let people down.
It's true.
Walt Disney World is very much a team effort. There's 74,000 people working there, and everyone understands that it is a team. It's too big a place for anyone to do anything by themselves. And so you really have to learn to collaborate, and you have to learn to trust people, and you have to learn to delegate, and you have to learn that you're not going to be the superstar in the limelight. You need to share the credit with everybody. And so people that have big egos don't do well at Disney, because you have to get rid of that, and you have to know that we're all here to help each other out, to deliver the mission, which is creating magic and happiness for our guests. And once you understand that, it's a fun place to work. But I've had a couple moments where I've tried to go out and try to do something by myself, and I was never successful. It doesn't matter what level you are in that company. If you don't have people and you're not connected with people, you don't reach out to have people help you get things done, you'll be stuck. And I think that's the way it's in entrepreneurship. It's all about collaborating, and it's about connecting, and it's about helping each other. And I have been so surprised and grateful of all the entrepreneurs I've met who have just been so generous with their time and so generous with their advice. I thought when I got out into the world to start my own company, it would be really competitive and people would not talk to you because they're competing with you. But everyone I've talked to has been very open and they share, and hopefully I'm going to have the opportunity to share my experiences and my advice with people who are doing this in the future. And I think that's the way the world works. There's this term called pay it forward. You have people help you in your career, you have family help you, you have other people help you, they open doors for you. And you should take that advice, you should take that opportunity, knowing that someday you're going to be the one helping others. And that's how everything works, I think.
That reminds me of Tom Hanks saying once, when you get into an elevator that raises you in life, once you get there, the least you can do is send it back.
Right.
People that don't want to talk or they don't want to share what they've learned with you, it's not someone that you want to be around it.
Right.
Right now that you're starting your own business, what is the biggest problem the world faces that you want to solve with your business?
I think the world is so divisive today. People are afraid of other people. You see that in the United States today. It's a bad situation.
Very polarized.
Yeah, people are polarized. They want to be with their own people and create enemies. They want to create another group that is the problem. And we're all sharing this planet. My wife and I have traveled extensively. We went to Morocco about 10 years ago. And a lot of my friends and people I know said, well, aren't you afraid to go to Morocco because they're Muslims there and they're terrorists? And I said, well, I don't know. I think there's very few and I think it's going to be fine. And sure enough, when we got there, almost everyone in the world is just trying to live their life. And they're trying to raise their family and they're trying to protect their kids and educate their kids to have a better life than they did. And we saw that in Morocco. We saw that in Tunisia. You had Muslims and Jews living next door to each other, and everything was fine. They just had different religions. But I think there's all this polarization that happens, and people, when they don't understand other cultures or they don't know other people from those cultures, they make up these stories and they create fear. I think that's one of the reasons that my wife and I love traveling so much, because one is I can represent to a certain degree the United States. Because I'm sure other countries, they have a stereotype of what Americans are like, and they have a stereotype of what French people are like. And I know we have certain stereotypes of how we think certain cultures are. And hopefully, as we travel and we share leadership messages and we talk to people about my leadership philosophies around leading self and leading your team and leading your organization, we're going to help bring some understanding to people and connect people. It's one thing to say, well, so that person from that country is like that. But once you meet someone from that country and you know them personally, everything changes. And all of a sudden, that country's not so bad anymore because you've educated yourself and you're not making these stories up because you've met someone from there. I think that's one of the things we can do. I can already see our kids are much more open than even I was when I was growing up. When my son was in second grade, at his birthday party, one of his friends was from China, one was India, one was African American, one was a girl. In my birthday parties, it was a bunch of white boys. That was the birthday party when I was in third grade. And I think every generation, if they're raised the right way, they're starting to not have all those preconceived notions about people. And they really don't care if you're straight or you're gay or you're black or whatever. All they know is you're just someone else and you're someone that they can become friends with and learn from. And hopefully what I'm doing and really open-minded is going to help people see that.
That's so great. That's awesome. What are the biggest pains or problems that people have that they would come to you for help?
I think one of the big things I've seen extensively, I struggled with it, and I think people in every job struggle with this, especially at Disney, is balancing things. People are trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I take care of my family? How do I have a good relationship with my spouse? How do I make sure I'm raising my kids the way I should be? How do I make sure I'm having a successful career so I'm making money to support my family and that I'm being challenged and respected? How do I take time for myself? And I think people are just so overwhelmed today. Technology is just evolving faster than humans can keep up with it. And we try to keep up with it. We're trying to stay connected. And so much information is coming in, and we're not supposed to be able to understand this much information coming. So we have to find ways to manage it. We have to find ways to turn it off and only focus on the important things. So I would, even now when I consult, people just say, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where to spend my time. Everything, I'm always behind on everything. Everything is an emergency, and I always feel like I just can't get there. A big conversation I've had with my managers and people at Disney is keep the main thing the main thing. Make sure that the most important things in your life you're focusing on. It's a very simple concept. It's very hard to do. I went through this when I was younger. When our son was born in France, he was, 6 months old. So now I was married and had a child with my wife. I was working, and it was really busy at Disneyland Paris every day. You're working a lot. And at the time I was playing rugby with a local rugby team. I called my dad one night and he said, "How are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm not doing very well. It feels like I can't do anything right. I'm trying to help out my wife. She's still on maternity leave, and I'm trying to help her with our son. He wakes up in the middle of the night, and she gets up, and I'm just trying to figure out how to help her more. I don't feel like I'm doing enough. And at work, I'm tired because I'm not sleeping. It doesn't seem like everything's going well there. And then rugby, I'm late to practice, or I'm missing practices." He said, "All right, well, think about it. You have some options here. Do you want to leave your wife and your child so you can focus on work and rugby?" I said, "Well, of course not. That's my family." He said, "All right, do you want to quit your job and play rugby, or take care of your wife and your child?" "Well, I need to have a job." He said, "All right, how about if you stop playing rugby?" I'm like, "Well, obviously I should stop playing rugby." It's prioritization. You have to sacrifice things. You can't do everything. And at the time, I thought I could do everything. I thought I could play a sport pretty seriously. I thought I could work, and I thought I could be there for my family. And the reality was I couldn't do all three well. I could only do two well. At that time in my life, I had to go to my team and say, "I can't play anymore." "No, you have to, Dan. We have a great season. You said you're going to be here." I said, "Look, nothing you're going to say is going to say rugby is more important than my job or my family. So there we go." I stopped playing, and all of a sudden everything fell into line. And I started to be a better spouse, a better husband, a better father. I had a better relationship with my family. Work got better because I just wasn't trying to do as much. So there's no easy answer to this, but people have to be relentless in prioritizing things. And they really have to write down what are the most important things in their lives, and then they have to look at how much time they're giving to those activities. Quickly, you're going to find there's things you're spending time on that just are not important in your life. A lot of people spend hours playing video games, or they've spent hours on social media. Well, if you're not married and you don't have kids, maybe that's fine because you have the time to use there. But you always have to sacrifice. It's about sacrifice and prioritization. When I was at Disney, I help people think through that all the time. And when now consulting, I help people think through that. Because I tell people, Disney's a great company, but it's not going to help balance your life. We're not going to say, you know what, we'll open that park 1 year later so everyone can have a balanced life. We go 100 miles an hour to run a business like anybody else does. And so your company is not going to figure out how to balance your life, and your family won't. It's up to you to make those hard decisions. And now that my kids have grown up and they're going to college and they're working, my wife and I now have other time to do other things that we didn't have time to do before. So your priorities will shift based on your life situation. And there's times when you'll have more time, and there's times when you'll have less time. But I think that's it. You don't want to have regrets. And I always like to say, how many regrets do you want to have at the end of your life? You want to say, you know what, I wish I was there more to see my kids when they were little. I wish I went to their sporting events. I wish I went to help them with their homework. I wish I had read them more bedtime stories. You don't want to have those kind of regrets. And when you're in that moment, you have to make that decision. What is the most important thing to me, and where am I spending that time? And if you can figure that out, boy, all kinds of problems go away. Your stress goes down. You have more purpose in your life. You're doing things better because you're doing less. And I think it's a great way to think about it. So that was probably the big one, just has been consistently throughout my career that I've struggled with, and I think people I've talked to have struggled with. And now that I like to say that I'm older and wise, maybe I can give them some tips on how to manage it.
That's awesome. It sounds so logical. Once you think about it, once you have someone that comes and just shows you, right? Okay, I have to do this. And to be fair to a lot of people, it's not new. No. You knew that all along, right?
Right.
What holds people back?
First of all, they just get so busy in their life, they don't take time to think. I saw that at Disney. I saw us make decisions as a company quickly that were just bad decisions because we just didn't take a step back to think logically and just common sense and really evaluate things. What I did at Disney, once a month, my assistant would schedule a day, and it was a meeting, and she'd just put on the calendar, meeting with Dan, and it was a meeting with myself. And so no one would take time, no one would block meetings that day. And I'd say, okay, what do we have on the calendar this week? She'd say, well, Monday you're doing this, Tuesday you're doing this, Wednesday is meeting with Dan day. And I just said, oh, I forgot about
the whole day?
The whole day.
Wow.
Sometimes I would just go to a park and just think about things. Okay, how are things going in my life? What should I be doing with my family I'm not doing? What conversations should I have with my wife that I haven't had lately? What are problems that at work that I should be dealing with that I've been shying away from because they're too complicated or I'm afraid to deal with them? And you just take that step back. Sometimes I would just put on a pair of shorts and a shirt and a hat and I'd go to the Magic Kingdom as a guest. I'd just spend the day in the park as a guest and just be there and watch people.
That sounds like a wonderful job benefit.
Yeah,
right
and I'd
there.
watch the guests. I'd get in line with them. I hear what they were talking about.
Right.
I would, because when you put on the guest's clothes, no one recognizes you. No one sees you. And so you spend the day thinking about how to make improvements there. So I think what holds people back, it's not that they don't work hard and they don't work fast. It's they don't slow down and they don't think more. And so I just think every once in a while you have to take that step back and maybe write down, what are the things right now that I do not enjoy about my life that is causing me stress, and how am I going to address those things? And when you start really looking at it logically, it's easy to see that. Culture today says we're supposed to be great at everything. Facebook, Twitter, everyone on there is smiling and they have this great life. And I think people look at that and they go, why can't I have a great life like that? Well, everyone's got problems. Everyone has a problem that you don't know about. They're dealing with a really hard problem you don't know about. And I like to say the biggest lie in America when you ask someone, how are you today? In the United States, we say, hey, I'm great. Everyone says, how are you? Great. How are you? Doing great. Everyone's not doing great. And you have to understand that when we get in society, we put on a facade. We put on a face that we're confident, we're happy, everything's good. That's only the facade we see. When I'd manage my teams and deal with my cast members, I would always remind my team, everyone here is dealing with a situation with their son, their daughter, their father, a medical situation. Maybe their marriages, maybe they're having financial difficulties. So you have to care about people and you have to really respect people and be kind. Once again, I think there's this pressure of people wanting to look like they have this perfect life, and so they don't deal with these things. They don't know how to say no. They can't say no because they want to, FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. They want to be involved in everything, and it's just not healthy. And so you have to make those decisions and just say, you know what? I'm going to sacrifice things and my life will get better. And the things that aren't as important, it's okay if I miss out on those because they're long term, they're not important.
That it's really funny because listening to you, it's being the executive of your life. You have to make decisions, right? You can't do everything.
Absolutely.
So we talk, and a lot of people, they're watching us right now. Hey guys, we have tons of small and mid-sized business owners. They're probably crying now, like thinking, oh my gosh, then I know what you mean because I don't have the time. My life is crazy.
Yeah.
How many people were under you at the top of your game at Disney?
12,000.
12,000 people.
Yeah.
How did you get from being the employee at the parking lot to managing 12,000 people and still finding time to think? How did you make that transition, and what lessons people can learn from that?
In life, there's problems and there's dilemmas. What's the difference for you between a problem and a dilemma?
Well, I would say a problem, it's a hardship or an issue I need to solve, but it's logical.
Right.
A dilemma, I would say it's something emotional, something in my mind maybe.
Right. A problem has a solution.
Okay.
1 + 1 is 2.
Right.
Solution. Most of the things we deal with in life have no solution. They're dilemmas. They can only be managed. You're never done with them. How much time you have, how you're prioritizing, it changes every day. You're always trying to figure out how to tie it all together. And I used to think everything was a problem. And I was really frustrated because I could never get the solution. I was never done. Like my wife and I were raising our kids. I just want to say, one day I just want them to get good grades and be nice people and not lie to me and be good at sports. And that's never going to happen. You're always raising your kids and you're always working on your relationship with your husband or your wife, and you're always trying to figure out how to make your business. So you have to enjoy the fight. You have to enjoy the journey because it's never going to be done. There is no finish line. It's just coming every day to give your best. As they talk about, it's not the destination that matters, it's the journey. And you have to get up every morning and say, I'm here today and I have an opportunity to go out and do what I'm going to do. Now, whether that day you're successful or not, some days you'll be successful, some days you won't. It's not about the success. It's about your efforts. It's about your attitude. It's about you going out and being your best self. And some days that's going to be great, and some days that won't be enough. You go to bed, you take a hot shower, you get up the next day, and you go back at it again. And that's what life's about. You get up every day with an attitude, I'm going to go out and fight, and I'm going to do what I can. I think that, going from parking to the vice president of Magic Kingdom, a lot of things never changed. A lot of the ways I treated people, how I organized things, you just add a few zeros to the end of the budget, but a lot of things are human nature and very similar. So one of the things is having the discipline to stay with the basics and just know that the basics are really important. In my book, the first section I talk about is leading self. Before you lead anyone else, you have to take care of yourself. And as I talked about before, you have to get organized, you have to prioritize what's important to you. You have to just do what you can to be physically fit. Medically, you have to go to the doctor. You have to know what your blood pressure is. Just the really basic things about health. You have to have the right kind of diet. I'm not a dietitian, but I know that there's a certain way that you can eat that you'll feel better. You need to drink enough water. You need to get enough sleep. That's a huge problem today, an epidemic. People don't sleep enough. People ask me, it's almost like they're bragging. Well, I only sleep 5 hours a night or 4 hours a night. I say, well, that's, maybe you're a really busy person. I sleep at least 7, usually 8 hours a night. People say, what time do you go to bed? I say, I go to bed about 8:30 every night. And I get up at 4:30, 5 in the morning, and I get a lot of work done. But I get enough sleep. Because when you get enough sleep, your energy's better, your attitude is better. And a lot of entrepreneurs sacrifice themselves for their families, for their employees. They don't take time for themselves. They don't think about their finances long term. That stresses them out. They don't think about their health. They don't get organized. They don't learn how to deal with stress. So I think the first thing I've learned over time is if you're going to progress in your career, you really have to be comfortable with yourself and be confident in yourself. As I grew more, there's really 4 areas that I spent almost every day thinking about when I was leading my team. The first one was making sure that I had the right talent on my team. Talent is so important. A lot of people think you can hire anybody and just teach them to do anything. And that's not true. And if you look at sports, it's obviously not true. When I was 16 years old, I could play soccer and I would never be a professional player because I just didn't have enough speed, I didn't have enough quickness, whatever it is. There's certain things that are wired into us. At Disney, when I hired people, I would start talking to them about their skill set, what skills and experiences have they had, what their passion level was. Like, you may be able to do this job, but do you want to do this job?
Passion level, you measure it.
Yeah. I talk to people, tell me about why you do what you do.
Okay.
And when you talk to people about that, you can hear the excitement in their voice. And the people who are just telling you a story because they want a job, that's obvious also. So do you have the skills to do this job? Do you have the passion to do this job?
Okay.
And number 3 is the most important thing. Do you have the right attitude to do this job? And attitude for me is the trump card. Like, even if you don't have the skills, maybe I'll teach you those skills because I'll take attitude every day. Because what people that have a great attitude, they never give up. They overcome barriers. They overcome obstacles. So I ask them a question. I'll say, tell me about a time you had an obstacle or you had a goal to reach and you weren't able to reach it. What did you do? And what I want to hear, I don't want to hear someone say, well, I called someone and they said they couldn't help me, so I decided that it was impossible.
Okay, yeah.
But then I talk to other people. They say, well, I had that goal and I didn't have the skill set, so I went back to school and I studied. And then I didn't get the job, and so then I started networking, and I didn't get that. So then I went ahead and I joined a club to learn more about that. And I just want to hear them trying and trying and trying again. And once again, they may not be successful, but if they have this attitude that they're never going to give up and they're never going to take no for an answer, these are the kind of people I want on my team because they're always going to find a solution, and they'll work really hard, and that's great people to have. So I started to hire people and surround myself with people like that. Because as you get more responsibility, you just don't have enough hours in the day to do everything you're supposed to do. So you have to trust the people around you, delegate to them, and they have to do things on your behalf. I think some entrepreneurs, probably work 7 days a week and they never want to leave their companies because they think if they leave, everything's going to fall apart.
That's a big problem. A lot of people feel guilty.
Right.
How do you deal with that?
You should feel guilty not taking care of yourself because if you don't do that, you're going to get frustrated with people. You won't think straight. You're not going to be clear with them. What I learned that when I was running the Magic Kingdom some days, the best thing I could do was just leave. Just go home. Just get out of the way. I'd stop in meetings. Hey, how are you guys doing? What are you working on? Well, we're working on this idea. And my idea was, I'll give you a piece of advice and I'll leave. They don't want my advice. They're experts in what they do. They just want to say, Dan, just go away and let us do our work and we'll come tell you when we're done. And so a lot of times I think as leaders, we think we're helping a lot more than we actually are. And once again, as a leader, your job is not to do. Your job is to create the environment to let your people do. And so as an entrepreneur, you have to feel comfortable to walk away. Now, you're going to work a lot of hours in any business, but you have to find a small group of people to put around you that you totally trust And you can turn off your phone and go away for a week and just know the company's going to run because you've gotten the right people and with the right skill sets in those jobs.
But it's interesting because that is only possible because of the first part. Because you surround yourself with the right type of people, right?
Absolutely.
Because if they're not the right type, you won't be able to do that.
Right. You can't just pick anybody and just say you're in charge and leave.
And leave, yeah.
You have to make sure you train them. They have the same vision as you. They trust you. And that's the next three things. So you get the right skill set in people, the right talents. The next thing is building relationships. That's a huge thing I did when I was working. Any cast member at the Magic Kingdom could call me directly. I had a special phone number. And I said, if you need to talk to me, you call this number. And you leave a message, you can text me or page me, and I'll call you back. And I wanted to make sure everyone had a direct line if they had something to tell me. I wasn't trying to become the manager of everybody, because we had 600 managers in the park, leading. So I didn't want to tell everyone, don't call your manager, just call me, because that's not a good plan. But what I told them is, talk with your manager, and if you feel like if you weren't listened to, or your problem wasn't resolved, or you feel really strongly and you don't know who to call me. And I'm the vice president, and I have the authority to help things happen.
And did people ever call?
Oh, yeah. I put my personal cell phone number on my voicemail. I said, if you have to talk to me 24 hours a day, here's my phone number.
Okay.
One person called me in 3 years. People are very responsible. People would leave me messages, and they'd say, you know what, I'm having a problem with my manager. And I'd call them back. I said, well, have you talked to them? Well, no. Well, why not? Well, I'm afraid to tell them. I don't know what they're going to say. I'm like, you're afraid to talk to your manager, but you're not afraid to call me. And they said, well, yeah, because you seem like you could help. And most of the time, I'd say, look, you need to work this out. You don't want me to help you. You can work this out yourself. I need you to go talk to your manager, tell them exactly what's on your mind, and they're going to listen to you. And if they don't, and they dismiss you, call me back. And almost every time they call me, hey, Dan, I talked to my manager, and it was a misunderstanding. They're doing something that I didn't like, and I told them now, and now they know. My job wasn't to be the hero. My job was to enable other people to solve problems. Because what sometimes people do is, I'm going to go call them and say, be nice to them. You haven't resolved the issue. You've just gotten in the middle of something. I wanted to build a relationship with everybody. I went to the cafeteria at the Magic Kingdom, and I had lunch with the cast every day. I'd sit down with people I didn't know and just start chatting with them. I'd be walking in the park every day. I'd be in the parking lot when people went home at night and just saying goodnight to them. I was always finding a way to be around so people knew who I was. They knew that the person running that park cared about them, and that was really important. Number three was expectations, clarity, prioritizing what's important. Well, you have to do that with your employees. So if it's really important that they give great customer service, you have to make sure that they're looking people in the eye and they're saying, Magia, welcome. You need to make sure they know what the behavioral expectations are so that they can run the business well. So if you're an entrepreneur, you should go ask your people what the expectations are. And if they don't know, you need to tell them what those expectations are. At Disney, we talk about safety is the most important thing. You never do anything if it's unsafe. If the attraction, something's wrong, you hit the button, you stop the attraction, because safety is the most important thing. You wash your hands every time when you go into a kitchen, because safety is the most important thing. Because we know if we don't have a safe environment, nothing else really matters. Our guests have to feel safe. Next is courtesy. Be nice to people. Number three is be part of the show. Make sure that you're entertaining people in an immersive way like Walt Disney planned for the parks to be. And number four is efficiency. Do things quickly. It's in that priority order. So that really gets when you have 74,000 people and they all know first we need to be safe, then we need to be nice, then we have to create a show for our people, then we have to be fast. And when everyone knows that, things are much more smooth. So make sure as an entrepreneur you're really providing clear expectations for performance. What does great look like? And make a video, make a recording, write it down, and make sure everyone has it. Because just an entrepreneur usually has a vision in their head, but they forget to tell their team about it. And then people don't know what they're thinking, and people can't read minds. And the last is reward and recognize performance. As I came up through the ranks from parking to different jobs, I realized how important it is to let people know how much you appreciate them. And reinforce behaviors. So if people are doing a great job, you have to reward them. You have to talk to them. You have to give them more money. You have to give them a thank you card. Just letting people know you appreciate them. We always forget to do that sometimes. My wife and I, we talk about that. Every time I talk to her on the phone, I always end the call with, I love you. And when I was growing up, we didn't say that a lot. We were this American family. We didn't really talk about our feelings. When I got older, I realized you got to say it. I'd say, she knows it, but I got to make sure I say it every day. So I would just say, as an entrepreneur who's growing their business, Go out and spend the extra money and the extra time to get the talent on your team. Don't settle for someone who's second or third. Go find the best. And you may have to pay them more, but boy, it's going to pay off for you tenfold in the future. They're going to make your life so much easier. Make sure you constantly focus on relationships. Get to know people personally. Spend time with people. Don't block your office. Get out of your office and be out there with people. Make sure you're clearly talking about what your vision is and what you want people to do, and make sure that clarity is there. And lastly, reward and recognize performance. And when you do that, people are more likely to repeat and keep doing what they do well.
Last question is, people are usually afraid to delegate and get out of the way because people are not going to do such a good job as I will. How should people deal with that?
You need to get over yourself. A lot of people can do things better than you, and you have to know that. And once again, you have to think about your role. Your role is not to do. Your role is to have others do so you can support them in that. And so you have to take risks. And sometimes you're going to give something to somebody and they're not going to do it as well as you. And you're going to have to accept that, or they're going to make a mistake. But I'd rather have someone go do 99 things right and go faster and make one mistake than me have to do 100 things. People want independence. They want to feel important. They want to feel respected. And when you don't give them that latitude to go operate on their own, it's very frustrating to them. And you're not going to unlock all the potential they have because they're always going to hold back. So you just got to let people go. And the great people are just going to go farther than you can ever imagine. They're going to fly when you just let them go.
Dan Cockerell, everybody, thank you so much. It was such a great
Thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to spending a lot more time in Brazil and a lot more time in São Paulo.
Awesome, thank you so much. E se você gostou dessa entrevista de hoje, envie esse link para as pessoas que precisam ouvir esse papo, ok? Esse foi o SuperCast, espero que você tenha gostado. A gente se vê no próximo episódio.